With LinkedIn Jobs, we tap into a network of more than 1 billion professionals to help you find quality professionals quickly and easily for any role you need. Marketing wizards? Found them.
Software engineers?
Found. That project manager I could never seem to hire? And found. LinkedIn Jobs quickly matches your roles with candidates with the right skills and experience. In fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Post your first job for free and get started at linkedin.com/spoken. That's linkedin.com/spoken. Terms and conditions apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome, dear fellows, to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans. It's a lovely sunny day, and I've just had a good old long listen to the new Saxon album. Now, it's relatively new. It came out on the 19th of January, but this year of 2024, if you're listening to it in the future, that's where it is, the 19th of January 2024, and right now we're in the middle of April. Now, 2024. I didn't get round to this because I've been a little bit busy with lots of things, as you know, listeners to the show. That's why I put out an interview that I did last week with Bruce Sword for Metal Ruse, because I had so much on my plate that I thought I would put it out, so at least you could have a listen and give me time to actually gather my thoughts. So, the album that came out, it's Saxon's 24th studio album. It got to number 20 in the UK, and it is 10 songs and 42 minutes long, right? It's a good day with a new Saxon album. If you go back and listen to my review of the previous Saxon album, I did one of my very early part of the show's history, Carpe Diem. That was the one based on the Romans. Well, this one here is an eclectic album, to say the least, but those that don't know who Saxon are, if they're new to the heavy metal and they come into my show and they go, who's Saxon? A quick overview of the band. Formed in 1980, they are one of the major movers of the new wave of British heavy metal movement. So NWOBHM, as we like to call it. They don't like that anachronism. I think that was just brought up. I think someone in Sounds made it up. Sounds was a musical newspaper, for those that don't know, back in the 70s, 60s and 70s and some early 80s. I think they even went through to the early 90s, I'm not sure. Anyway, they were the pioneers of the sound, along with Maiden and Diamond Head and Def Leppard and Whitesnake and a lot of Judas Priest. Although I said before on this show that I'm not sure I think Judas Priest is a new wave of British heavy metal band, but, you know, we all have our opinions, don't we? And so their sound is typically that movement. It's rock and roll, it's blues, got heavy blues influence, it's got a lot of dueling guitars, because it's two guitarists, you know, great vocals in Bill Byford. Bill Byford is one of the best vocalists in heavy metal in general. Him alongside Bruce Dickinson and Rob Halford, you really don't go far wrong from there. You know, soaring vocals, dramatic composition, usually some historical theme behind the music, and this album is no different to that. They've sort of, where with Carpe Diem, of course, it was all based on the Roman. Now, you can't say invasion, because the Romans didn't invade the British Isles. when they did back in 43 AD, I believe that's the date, because there was no nation to invade. So the islands were populated by hunter-gatherers and well, no, not hunter-gatherers then, because it was Saxon. So it would have been, they were just farming communities, no government, no real sense of overlords. They minding their own business, you know, and so they sort of came into the country. And on a side note, I get cranky with this one because I was talking to someone about this the other day. But they didn't destroy the Anglo-Saxon way of life, because otherwise we probably wouldn't be speaking the way we are, actually, because a lot of Anglo-Saxon influence in our language. But they basically lived alongside them. They took their Roman gods and they sort of merged them with the local society, the local groups' deities, usually being of earth bound, like the season driven. It was all gods of the woods and the water and the sky and the seasons, and they would merge them together. It wasn't until the Romans became a Christian society that they sort of forced themselves upon their religions upon the natives, because that's the way of Christianity, is to spread the word, not to live alongside. What it was then, anyway. Anyway, I'm sidetracking only because I just finished reading a very good book about that, so that's probably why I'm blurbing. But in this album, we don't have that. We have a more eclectic thing. We still have that fantastic piece of, it's always something to learn in a new wave of British heavy metal album. As I said before, you only got to put an Iron Maiden album on, and suddenly you're learning as well. It's like when someone said to me, "Were you good at school?" I said, "No, I learned all my stuff from TV and Monty Python." Right. So, which is, probably the truth, right? Music and Monty Python. There you go. It was my education. So, it opens with. Oh no, I won't talk about that just yet. We'll talk about the band first. So, as I said, the two founding members of the band, one founding member and one came in a few months afterwards, are still in the band. So, Bill Byford on vocals, and now we've got Nigel Glecker. He joined in 1981. He's on drums. You've got I cannot read my handwriting. 1 second. I apologise. It's Nigel Glockler. Who was the drummer. He is the drummer. And Nibs Carter. I wrote Mobs because my handwriting is terrible. Nibs Carter on guitar, with Brian Tatler from Diamond Head on guitar. Just like that is, straight out of the park. That's an amazing lineup. Nibs Carter's on bass. I do apologise. It's Brian Tatler on guitar and Nigel and Doug Scarrett on guitar. Okay, there you go. Got it right there eventually. Anyway, wow, what a lineup! So three legends in their legends in their own bath time, aren't they? Really. Bill Byford, wonderful as a guitar, as I mentioned. Nigel, constant. It's always good to have a constant member of the band that's not just the singer. So the drummer is, it's a good one to have. It's a nice steady back to the band. And of course, you then got Brian Tatler from Diamond Head on guitar, and his Black and White Flying V. He's really groovy. I haven't really talked about Diamond Head too much. I have a little bit in the past, but they're a band that could have been and should have been. Again, music industry problems, just not being there at the right place at the right time, even though incredibly gifted band with, A Lightning for the Nations, one of the best albums of the whole movement. But, it is what it is. And he still keeps playing, I saw an interview with him where he said that they went and saw Led Zeppelin at Wembley Arena, and it was like, Wembley Stadium, sorry, it was like changed his life. He just wanted to be Led Zeppelin. And you can sort of see really that he's trying. He's got such a groovy guitar style. And then of course you've got some additional guitars by Peter Quinn on tracks Fire and Steel and Supercharger. But it's produced, mixed and mastered by the greatest in the industry at the moment, and that's Andy Sneap. Andy Sneap, second guitar in Judas Priest, guitarist from my favourite English thrash band, which is Sabaton. Sorry, Sabaton. My God, Sabat. He is just absolutely brilliant. Everything he touches is gold, 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 baby. He's a brilliant guitarist. He's got a brilliant ear for music. And by all accounts, he's a real genuine geezer as well, I've heard. But produced, mixed, and mastered, and that's brilliant because one person has done it. He hasn't produced it, had it over to someone else. His vision is different to mix it. His vision is different to mastering it. He's taken it from the gate to the front of the house. If you know what I mean, he's taken it down the street and back again. He's done the whole thing. That's a saying. I'm going to use it anyway. But what a solid lineup. I can't speak for Doug Scarrett and Nibs Carter because I don't know. I didn't see much information when I was looking for them, but I'm sure they're absolutely fantastic and have had a brilliant past or still, a brilliant industry. I can't imagine that Bill would pick someone up that was incompetent, and you can hear it in the music. You really, really can. So I'll take you through the song title rundown. Okay, we've got The Prophecy, Hellfire and Damnation, Madame Guillotine, Fire and Steel, There's Something in Roswell, Kubla Khan and the Merchants of Venice, Pirates of the Airwaves, 1066, Witches of Salem, and Supercharger. What I didn't also mention is right at the beginning, and also in one tiny bit of voiceover on Fire and Steel, even though it's not actually not credited for that bit, but Brian Blessed does the intro. It's a spoken word intro that sets up the pace of the album, and I'll talk about it when we get there. But how amazing is that? Brian Blessed. I mean, I can't do the impersonation, but I was only just watching Blackadder, the first one, the other day, and you can't mistake Brian Blessed. You can't, can you? What a voice! What a character. I mean, if you want to have a good laugh, watch him on YouTube, trying not to swear with his hands in ice water, because he did an experiment that because he's known for swearing, okay, and he put his hand in ice water, and the science goes if you swear you don't feel the pain, so he has to try and not swear, and then he just starts going for it to see if he can feel any difference, and it's very, very funny. Those who don't know, don't watch Blackadder in some countries like America, and aren't begin at watching it. He's also in Flash Gordon and lots and lots and lots of other things. Anyway, we'll leave that for the second side to talk about the tracks, because they're actually pretty. I mean, this is their best, in my opinion, their best album for about 10 years. I mean, 24 studio albums, it's very difficult to spread that sound. I mean, Saxon did have a period in the sort of late 80s, early 90s when a lot of heavy metal bands were, when the fervor for it, the want for it was not so high, and so they had to try and keep alive, so they changed their sound slightly. Same way that Metallica did all that sort of stuff. Maiden have done it slightly. It's a sad thing, but it is something they had to do, and thank goodness they did, because they kept the band going. And let's hope that we get this tour over here in Australia, maybe around the world, wherever you are around the world. Let's hope you get to see Biff and the band, because Biff and the band. I was going to say Bill and the band, but Biff sounds better. So, Hellfire and Damnation. It really says it all in the title, doesn't it, really? But it is such an eclectic album, as I was saying before. It doesn't really have a narrative arc through it, like a lot of stuff that I enjoy has a narrative arc. This has sort of. Now, I'm not, again, it's going to be a bit of a history lesson, this one, because there's some really fascinating stories that he does sing about in on this album. But it's not, don't reach for the stop button. It's not dull by any means. It's not a dry science lesson. Okay, it's not a history of podcast that will bore you. Although I love history podcasts, so I shouldn't say that. It will. You know what? If you're young and you're listening to this, and if you're old listening to this and thought I don't know much about that, do reach for the internet, go and have a look and see. And read up on about it, because that's what I think Bill and the guys would like. They'd like you to open and expand your mind, not just bang your head. You can do both, can't you? Why not? Anyway, that's enough for this side. I'll talk to you on the other side. Saxons, Hellfire and Damnation, track for track. Do listen to some adverts. Do keep listening, because it does pay me a little bit, a few shekels here and there. Otherwise, skip it. And we'll see you on the other side. Bye for now.
Hi, I'm Daniel, founder of Pretty Litter. Cats and cat owners deserve better than any old-fashioned litter. That's why I teamed up with scientists and veterinarians to create Pretty Litter. Its innovative crystal formula has superior odor control and weighs up to 80% less than clay litter. Pretty Litter even monitors health by changing colors to help detect early signs of potential illness. It's the world's smartest kitty litter.
Go to prettylitter.com and use code ACAST for 20% off your first order and a free cat toy. Terms and conditions apply. See site for details.
I'm Sandra, and I'm just the professional your small business was looking for. But you didn't hire me because you didn't use LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn has professionals you can't find anywhere else, including those who aren't actively looking for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role, like me.
In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you'll miss out on great candidates like Sandra. Start hiring professionals like a professional. Post your free job on linkedin.com/spoken today.
Welcome back, dear listeners, to part 2 of Heavy Metal Tones episode of Saxon, the new album, Hellfire and Damnation. Just getting comfortable in my chair, get my tea nice and ready. Look, if you've stuck with me this far and have come through to the second half, thank you very much for staying and listening. It's always difficult to, maintain people's attention spans, and new listeners, sometimes they jump in, don't like the sound of my voice, don't, think they're not that professional, jump out again. Good luck to them. But if you're here with me, fantastic, thanks for staying. Now, it's 10 songs, which is 42 minutes long, as I said. You can't really call the first song a song, so let's say 9 songs. Because the first track is called The Prophecy, and it is, as I mentioned on the other side, the wonderful and brilliant Brian Blessed. Basically, he's saying, actually, no, I won't read it out to you. I'm going to actually give you this one. You go and listen to it. What he's doing is he's starting up he's creating a audio canvas, if you want, if you like, for the first song, which is the title track, Hellfire and Damnation. Because Hellfire and Damnation is about the fight between good and evil, which is very, 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 I'm going to say again, very new wave of British heavy metal. It is so metal. It is so old school metal. It's unbelievable. Nowadays, it's a bit more extreme these days. You don't, very few metal bands are traditional, aren't they, nowadays? You dip in and it's either extreme or extreme, really. You don't get the and the term easy listening is the worst thing to say, but you don't get the Saxons, the Maidens, the Priests often, where musicality is a little more to the forefront than brutality. Now, don't get me wrong, that I love brutal music. I really, really do. You only have to go back 3 episodes and hear my bonus episode that I did with Rock Pit. So, I do really enjoy it. but also at the same time, yin and yang. I like softness, and I like traditional music, and I like music that I can put on in the house and not terrify my wife, if you know what I mean. I do that enough as it is. So you get it's a good story, right? Hellfire and Damnation. It opens with some dynamic guitars. I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere cheekily Andy Sneap's on there, but you know, with you know, Tatler and Scarrett, all just you know, packing away at that guitar. You can almost see Tatlow and his trademark V doing his sort of like side to side sway, very priesty. It's got a really heavy sound. It's very, as I said, because it's Andy Sneap, I don't need to tell you how good the production is. I don't need to tell you how good the composition is, because it goes without saying, right? It really truly does. He never ever lets you down. So musically, it is what it is. You know, brilliantly crisp and clear through every track of the album. It's got you know, tempestuous. I can't even say it today. Hang on. Tumultuous guitar. That's what I'm trying to say. Pounding drums, thunderous bass, great speed, and of course, Bill has never sounded as good. And I say this all the time for every album I seem to review, but I really mean this. Like, you know, how do they keep doing it? How is Bill at his age? How is Rob at his age? How is Bruce at his age? Although Bruce's register's a bit lower, managed to keep going with this kind of sound. It's just remarkable. I know you might say a lot of studio trickery, but no, I don't think so, because they do it live. If they couldn't do it live, they wouldn't do it in the studio, if you know what I mean. So, you know, it's got a brilliant sing-along chorus. It's not preachy religion. You see that it says Hellfire and Damnation. It's not telling you. I mean, I don't know the religiosity of the band. I don't know if they're secular, non-secular. I don't care. I don't. And even if they were, who gives a fuck? To be honest, who gives a shit what they Ooh, I swore twice. I don't care. Anyway, brilliant opening track. It's really refreshing to have an opening track, the title track. And sometimes they chuck them in the middle of the thing, and it, like, I don't know. I like it right at the beginning, and it really opens up this album with a thundering anthematic track, which, you know, could see itself on the live setup really comfortably. And then we tumble into Madame Guillotine. Now, I don't have to tell you too much about the guillotine. You all know what that is. It's a big wooden structure with an angled blade that is dropped from about 4 meters up to slice off the heads of the aristos in the French Revolution that started on the 5th of May 1789 and finished on the 9th of November 1799. Okay, so quite a long period. It was called the Terror, when the French peasants, which is the wrong word, but that peasant doesn't actually mean what it seems to come to mean now, but the French underclass, if you want to put it that way, was sick of the way that the royal family were, you know, the people were starving in the streets, but there was, you know, the royal family and the aristos flashing their wealth, you know, wedding dresses covered in brilliant diamonds, you know, when people were starving and couldn't even afford to feed their families. Now, how they went about it, that's got nothing to do with me. I don't agree with how they went about it. But the same with the Russian Revolution, the same with the French, with the English Civil War. It's not, you know, people will react brutally to a brutal situation when they are backed against a wall, and this is what happened. Now, it's a bit of a fallacy. People say that guillotine died by the guillotine, the man that invented it. I don't believe he did, and he wasn't the inventor anyway, because that form of execution had been around for a little while in China, I think. No, I read that somewhere. Again, I could be wrong. I'm not a historian, am I? Anyone out there who is expert at these things, please do, you know, reach out and tell me that I'm wrong, because, you know, I love that, don't I? Anyway, it doesn't. it doesn't have, for such a brutalist story, it's quite a light musical theme. It has a really fun play on words like "Don't Lose Your Head" and things like that. I mean, it reminds me when I listen to it actually to the Carry On movie "Don't Lose Your Head," Carry On, Don't Lose Your Head, which was originally called "Don't Lose Your Head" because they were trying to get away from the Carry On moniker, but it wouldn't sell tickets, so they renamed it to Carry On, Don't Lose Your Head. With the Count of Frou Frou and all that. I absolutely bloody love that movie so much. It encapsulates the French Revolution in a light-hearted way, very, very, very succinctly. Also takes off movies like Poe Geste, although they did that with Follow That Camel, which was another one that became Carry On, Follow That Camel, because they were trying to move away from the Carry On moniker. Anyway, that's a different side note. I'm a huge Carry On film fan. I could go on about that. I'm not going to. I did think about doing a separate podcast, but someone has already done it, so I ain't going to do it. It's a fun song. It doesn't hang around, like 4 minutes. That's what's good about these tracks. All of them don't distract too long. I like a long song, you know that. But these just bounce around and keep you entertained and ready and waiting for the next one. And they don't. There's no real slow pieces in this album. The only one that's slower would be the opening minute or two in Prophecy, which is, as I said, a spoken word, right? So, Madame Guillotine, is it my favourite song on the album? I will let you know at the end, but it's one of them. And then we move into Fire and Steel. This, when I first heard this, I thought, hang on, is this a Judas Priest song? Because because Andy Sneap is in Judas Priest, it sounds really priesty, because it's a song about the steel industry in the north of England and it being the best in the world, and also where heavy metal was born in the north of England, in the steel mills, around the steel mills, Priests, Sabbath, Saxon, all these big names come from these industrial areas. Like Rob Halford said in an interview once, you could feel the floor rumble in your classroom, and the heads, the engines were pounding out the steel, and it was what made the sound of heavy metal. And I think it's a little bit far-fetched from Robbie, but I really love that analogy. And the song does sound like a Priest song, and I think they've done it deliberately. It is because they do name check Priest, and it is a sort of way of saying, yes, we're all part of that first wave. That's the sound. That's where it come from. They're very proud of it, and so they should be. Working class lads making themselves good, And as I've always said, from our generation, I don't know about now, not so much now, but my generation and before, the way out was through music. It was you were either going to be an actor or you were going to be a musician, and that was the way out. That was the way out of drudgery and working in the factories and following your dad into an industry you weren't interested in doing, or going into the armed forces. Nowadays, our children and our children's children and our children's children will have the access to do whatever they want. I said that to my two daughters a long time ago. I said, you are the generation, the lucky generation, that if you choose not to do one thing, you can do another, and you can retrain, and you can be someone else in a blink of an eye. We didn't have that route. It was very defined for us, and so you'd break out from those shackles, and music was that way of doing it, and heavy metal was the way for a lot of us then. All right, and it's, to me, it still is the way that I managed to cope in life anyway. So really good song, really good throwback, great Priest-esque guitar sound. You listen to it and don't tell me you don't think you're listening to a Priest song, because I dare you, because it really, I had to actually re-listen to the lyrics. I had to actually re-listen to the song and understand what it was about before I was like, hang on, what's going on here? And then we thunder into There's Something in Roswell. Now, okay, Saxon have this way of doing this. They have for a little while now. They make one song that's relevant to the time, like on Carpe Diem. There was a song about COVID. I'd said at the time, I don't appreciate it. I didn't like it. It will date the album. It will make, you know what I mean? It's yes, we were living through it, but the whole idea of rock and roll is to fantasize it isn't happening. Is that not the case? During war, you don't hear songs about war, do you? I know songs like "Hang Out Your Washing on the Siegfried Line" and and all that stuff was about war, but it wasn't. It wasn't name checking the Nazis and tanks and planes and bombs, was it? It was a way of escapism. I didn't want it. I don't like songs written by COVID about COVID, and I'm not. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. But anyway, this one is not quite like that. This is about the Americans' release of information, the UFO or UAPs they call them now, isn't it? Unidentified aerial something phenomena. Anyway, it's about that and the fact that the information, even though they were releasing it, wasn't really released, and Roswell was just a balloon, and all that kind of stuff. So it's relevant to now, or when the album was written. It's quite good. It has a nice sort of science fiction-y feel at the beginning with some sound effects that go on, and it's what I didn't mention. Oh, sorry. What I didn't mention about Fire and Steel was right at the beginning. You do get a little tiny bit of Brian Blessed, because they're sort of, it's almost like a Saxon. The song itself is about the steel industry, but it's also about Saxons as well. And you hear a bit in there at the beginning. I meant to mention that. It slipped my old man's brain. I apologise. I am looking at my notes. It is written there. I wasn't taking note. Anyway, fast forward. As I said, Saxon Roswell. For me, the weakest song on the album. I don't really like the wordplay in the lyric. It's a little bit naive for me. But it might be your favorite. If you're a sci-fi nut and a UFO nut, you might love it. I don't really care too much for for UFOs. I love, as you know, paranormal, but UFOs, if I say on about them, I tend to go, oh yeah, because for me they're real. They have to be real. They're obviously real. But to me anyway, don't go looking at me as if I'm a nutter. That some people don't believe in them. I genuinely do. Whereas the paranormal, as in hauntings and so on, it's so unproven that it's such a thing that we can explore more, right? It is the unknown. Whereas science fiction, where it's logical that there would be alien life on other planets. Anyway, go off a different tangent tone, sorry. But musically, yeah, weakest on the album for me. And then we get into one of what I call I like to call these moments Maiden moments, because Maiden is very, very well known for this. They take a very known piece of history, and written history, and they make a fantastic epic song out of it. And this is an epic song. This is Kubla Khan and the Merchant of Venice. Now, originally I thought it was the Sam Taylor Coleridge poem, the Kubla Khan, about the ancient Chinese ruler. But no, it was not. It is not. It's actually about the Merchant of Venice. Mentioned in this is actually Marco Polo, because Marco Polo was one of the first European writers to come back from the Far East after meeting Kubla Khan, and then writing about him and telling everyone in the in Europe about this amazing ruler of Asia. And the song is basically about that. It's about the spice trade and silks and cottons and interaction between this ancient civilization in the Chinese, the Kubla Khan, the Khans, and then the Merchant of Venice, right? And it's epic. I really, really enjoyed it. I had to go and Google why I didn't understand, because when I first heard the title, I thought Merchant of Venice. It's a Shakespeare play, and I was like, "Well, I don't remember Shakespeare ever talking about the Kubla Khan." Of course, it had nothing to do with Shakespeare. He just used the term Merchant of Venice because Marco Polo was a merchant of Venice, and did explore the world and brought back wonderful things. I mean, he did horrible things, of course, but they all did then. But he did meet Kubla Khan. So You can go, and there are, again, fantastic podcasts out there that will take you through the history of that part of the world, and also for the Venice and through, Polo and Magellan and all those people. It's just musically, this is my favorite vocal performance on the album by Bill. I really love the way that he comes down a slight level, and he really holds a beautiful note as Bill, and it's sort of backed with some really, really funky and I can't remember saying this, really groovy metal in the background. And I sat there listening to it, and I was taken away on a Silk Road journey. I really was. I could imagine these boats laden down with cloves and cinnamon and nutmeg, which was at the time more valuable than gold. It was the commodity of nations. It was the the gold standard things. They were worth more than gold itself. And I just find that I've always found that absolutely fascinating, that you would sell things in the weight of salt or cloves or any of those wonderful Asian spices, and it has that spicy feel to it. Actually, brilliant. Favorite track on the album, I think possibly definitely is. And then we move to Pirates of the Airwaves. This took me back to a time that I hadn't thought of in a long, long time. Myself and my generation, my brother's generations, are children of the radio era. Yes, so you got your music and your introduction to music through the radio, because it was a free, if it was portable, commodity that you could take around with you, turn on anywhere if you have a battery and an aerial and access to a signal, and you could listen to all sorts of music at your own, anywhere from around the world if you were lucky. Okay, but it was controlled in England by the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. You had to have a license to broadcast music. You had to have a license to listen to music if it was in your home. And so it was control. They basically, that in that respect, the BBC controlled what you listened to. It's no way on the kind of level of Stalinism or anything like that. There's no restrictions, although there was, because later in the 60s and the early 70s and onwards, when kids started speaking their mind and using language that was not considered good by the elders, yes, there was restrictions, i.e. the Sex Pistols got to number one, but they didn't really, if you know what I mean, right? Anyway, that's a different episode which I've talked about before. So a group of young men, DJs, they became rock stars, these DJs, and they were very big. They did find themselves coming into the mainstream eventually, but they were on great big boats docked out in international waters and on oil rig platforms and platforms. They created what we call pirate radio. So because they were in international waters, they didn't have to have a license to broadcast, and it was illegal to receive those broadcasts, but it was a very grey area. So no one ever actually got persecuted for it, but it was technically illegal. There were radio stations like Radio Luxembourg, Radio London. There was, hang on here. Yeah, radio, there was even magazines, teenage girls magazines aimed for these shows. There was one called Fab 208, which was a Radio Luxembourg's radio frequency number on the dial, which is 208. It went on for some time, at least 10 years before the rules changed, because the government couldn't control it, and they wanted a bit of money from it, of course. So why would you not bring those stations back under your wing? And then when you do that, you can then, give the fake appearance that you're letting them listen to what they want to listen to. Hey, it's youth radio, man. Funky radio DJs, and there was a lot of them. I remember a lot of them. I'm not sure if Tony Blackburn was one of them, but that's definitely one of them. Definitely Keith. Is it Keith Chegwin? I think Keith Chegwin was, and I could be wrong on that one. Noel, as in Noel's House Party from those in the UK. He, what was his bloody last? See, I've lived in this country for too bloody long. 1 second, my brain's gone. Old man, Noel Edmonds, of course, bloody idiot. We don't forgive him if you live in the UK for Mr. Blobby, do we? So, but anyway, they went from there. I think Terry Wogan was one of them. The fabulous Sir Terry Wogan, of those who like me love Eurovision will know exactly who Terry Wogan is. And we watched his programs every weekend. Not every weekend, I think they were on his chat show. Everyone was on Terry Wogan. I think Marillion Fisher was on Terry Wogan once. Anyway, that aside, they were all on there, and they became integrated into the radio stations and the zeitgeist of the nation without being illegal. And so for those boats never really needed any more, and they sort of, went their ways. But this song is about that. It sounds like Biff, saying that when he was a kid, dialing through the stations to find rock and roll, and the only way he could find the Rolling Stones was on Radio Luxembourg, right? And it has that sort of, when you listen to this, it is heavy metal, but there's a sort of 60s swing to it. There's a sort of like pop, sort of Mersey beat sort of ish sound to the music. I don't know whether I'm imagining that, but that's what I hear. And it's actually a really lovely song. And it took me back to that time because my brother used to listen to Radio Luxembourg. I remember. And if you look on the old radios, you've got in your parents' house, or you've got an old retro radio, and you look at the dial, you will see Luxembourg on there. Because they made it, because the radios were made with those frequencies on there. It wasn't a secret. You just couldn't, you weren't really allowed to do it, but they couldn't stop you either. So yeah, I just remember my brother dialing in on his little transistor radio, little plastic red transistor radio that he had, one speaker, and playing, blasting tunes through that. What they were, I don't know. It was probably something like The Who or something. Anyway, we then move on to 1066. Now, 1066 says it all, doesn't it? Those who don't know their history or are new to or don't really like history, 1066 is the year of the Battle of Hastings, when William of Normandy, the pretender to the throne of England, it was meant to be given to him, but the king before him John was a little bit weak. Is it John? Not quite remember. Anyway, was a bit weak and promised it to him because at that time England controlled Normandy, Brittany, and quite a bit of the coast of France. And Hayes' death, the next in line supposedly was William, but Harold Hardrada, he decided to take it. And not Harold Hardrada, I'm talking about Harold Godwinson. Sorry, he fought Hardrada. Harold Godwinson took the crown, and in one fateful year, unfortunately in 1066, he fought on one coast the Viking invasion of Hardrada and Tostig, and he beat them. He beat them back, and that was the end of the Danelaw in England. Well, in what was the newly formed England, because it was a lot of up until that point, as I said before, it was firstly hunter-gatherers, then it was little tiny villages, then it was the Romans, and then it was all sorts of independent Wessex, Essex, Sussex, and so on, independent nations. Now, I could have got it all in the wrong way around, but I didn't. I think that is correct. And of course, the Vikings the Scandinavians, I should say, wanted to come back and have a bit more. And they didn't. They were beaten by Harold, pushed them back. Unfortunately, as Hitler found out in the Second World War, fighting on two fronts is quite difficult. And he marched down to the south coast on hearing that William was crossing the Channel with his armada, and fought them in Hastings at a place called a Battle, which is very apt. Unfortunately, these soldiers were tired and battle worn and weary, and the Normans had taken the high ground, and the Saxons, or Anglo-Saxons as in Harold, had taken the low ground, and firing rains of arrows. Their archers were very, very good. Our archers were brilliant, but the French archers were even better at that particular time. They didn't have the longbow, but they could fire very quickly and very accurately. And according to the Bay of Tapestry, Harold was hit in the eye by an arrow. Now, there is some people that think that isn't a picture of him with an arrow in his eye. That's it could be a meteor behind him. And he's looking up at it, because there was a meteor that destined the future. It was an omen. I believe it was Halley's Comet, but I could be wrong. Anyway, William won, and as we all know, and he was crowned king on Christmas Day in 1066. So, this is what the song is about. It's about that. It's about the death of the Danelaw. Look that up. That's a very fascinating conversation about the Danelaw. And then the movement of the French into England. Now, the interesting about that is, what's fascinatingly brilliant about it was that the French were so snobby. French. I'm not going to go at the French. That only the nobility and the dukes and the higher ups spoke French. The serfs and below spoke Anglo-Saxon, and so the native tongue was kept alive. What the Normans did was build lots and lots of castles, lots and lots and lots of defences. Of course, brought lots of other things to the nation of Britain, but it did that. Built lots of castles, firstly in wood, then in stone. But the great thing, as I said, is they didn't push their language out into serfdom, and so once William had died and we got a new king on the throne, the French wasn't spoken anymore in the higher ups. So that's basically what this song is about. It has a feel of battle to it. It's a typical Saxon song. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of great guitar on it. It's really fascinating to listen to. It really does you can always smell the blood in the air and the sound of the horses' hooves and the arrows flying when you hear this song. So I really, really liked it. We then charge headfirst into Witches of Salem. Of course, most of us will know about the Salem witch trials. It was the February of 1692 to May 1693. 200 people were prosecuted in Massachusetts, 200 plus. 30 of them were found guilty. 19 of them were executed. 14 were women, 5 were men. One was hung. One man died due to come to his torture, which is Giles Corey. And some died in prison. 5 died in prison. Now, they were accused by, and this is what I find absolutely fascinating with the witch trial, actually. They were accused by Betty Paris, who was 9, Abigail Williams, who was 11, Anne Pitnam Jr., who was 12, and Elizabeth Hubbard, who was 17. Now, apart from Elizabeth Hubbard, who was 17, by then was marriageable age and could have children, the rest were real still children. So a vast number of people's lives, families, and reputations were destroyed by a falsehood pushed onto them by their parents to gain land and revenge on. I'm not going to go into it fully, but it was a travesty. Okay, and it took 300 years before they were pardoned. Those that were murdered, and there was a park now in Massachusetts, which in Salem, which celebrates those poor people that were put to the sword, as it were, hung mainly, which is horrible. And it wouldn't be in the long drop either. These were hangings where you were tied onto a tree trunk, a chair, and the chair was kicked under you. you didn't drop and your neck snapped like you do in modern hangings, which is a quicker death. This was a slow death. You basically strangulated you. You hung. You die with sophistication. I wish I could die of sophistication. No, suffocation. The lucky ones, of course, their necks would snap, but very rarely did they. Anyway, that's what this song is about, and it does. Again, musically, I don't know how they do it. This band, but he does come across in the lyric and in the music quite a sad story, and it's I mean, it's not a story that's easily told, but it's a brilliant one that's been told many times, and this is a brilliant way of doing it. If you can call this on a story, brilliant. You know, you can look at me and say, "Oh God, another witch song." You know, done before. Yet it has been done, and it's been done by bigger bands, by lesser bands, and sometimes I would say even better than this, of course. But they do it in their own Saxony way. Bill does it in his own way. Does it with intelligence and reverence. There's no fun or Mickey taken here. This is a really sad story done in a real classic rock and roll way. Andy Sneap's production on it is bloody marvelous. The dual guitars on it, just the solo is wonderful. And as I said before, the music is so Saxon. It's so new wave of British heavy metal. It's just fun, fast, blues-driven heavy metal. I just absolutely love it. And then we'll finish off the album with Supercharger. Supercharger. Okay, you know what I said originally, that I thought that possibly The Sun in Roswell was the weakest song on the album. This is contender for it, only, and I mean only, because it's not a subject that I really enjoy, interestingly enough, because it's about cars, of course, superchargers. Now, I know two things about cars: nothing and bugger all, okay? They go forward, they go back, and you put petrol in them. That's about as far as I know about cars. Now, this is obviously about the invention of the supercharger that made cars go faster and faster and faster. And in my head, I'm picturing NASCAR, even though it's probably not NASCAR. He's probably talking about Formula One and things like that in the UK. But to you Americans, NASCAR, you know, a sport where you don't go around corners. Love you Americans. Like, it's nice and simple, eh? Very, very, very fast in a loop. Not that it's not dangerous, I'm not saying that, but it's just hilarious. That's the sport. And it's actually one of the second biggest watch sport in the world outside of the World Cup. Now, a little bit of history. It was originally, the supercharger was originally invented in 1878 in Birmingham. It was originally used for motor vehicles, but then predominantly used in aircraft in the 1910s, and then taken up in the 20s by Bugatti and Alfa Romeo and all those sort of things, and then re-engineered. I'm not going to even pretend to know that I know the science between what a supercharger is. All I can think of is it's got something to do with aspiration. I'm not sure. Air in the... I don't know. Who knows? It's for engine heads, not me. All I can say is it was a song I tuned out of slightly. Great song. Is it a song to end the album? No, I would have probably ended the album on Witches of Salem. But hey, you know, it's not my decision. But look, it wasn't my favourite song on the album. I think the two weaker ones are, as I said, that one and There's Something in Roswell. But again, you might listen to this album and go, Tony, you don't know what you're fucking talking about. And I'll say, fine. You know, vive la différence, as the Normans would say. Anywho, that's Saxon's Hellfire and Damnation, their 24th studio album, and what a cracker of an album it is. It's not all killer, no filler, but it's mostly killer, little filler. That's my review. If I was going to give it a Millsy meter, I'm going to say about a 9. Because it didn't blow my socks off because of those two tracks, but it certainly kept me entertained for 44 minutes. It didn't linger. It's lovely to see bands bringing their music back into two sides of vinyl again. It's so much common sense. You know, you don't need an hour and 15 minutes, unless you just don't. Prog albums, yeah, go for it. You know, concept albums, be my guest. But put onto 2 vinyl, fine if you have to. 2 CDs if you really need to, but the sound is so much but less compressed with 44 minutes, and that's the thing I love about it the most. And the volume ceiling is not crazy. It's just perfect. And this album, which I've ordered on vinyl, I haven't received it yet, will be an absolute cracker in an analog medium. I'm absolutely sure. Anyway, that's that for me this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Do go and enjoy it. Do dip in and have a listen to some history. I hope I haven't been too boring with some of my history. I do, you know me, I love stories behind songs. I just love it. It's what makes a song for me. I really, really enjoy going on its journey with the author, with the musician, the textures it makes, the shapes it pulls, the soundscapes it produces, and they do it in such a stellar way. In such a way that, you know, I love NWOBHM. I love it, and this truly is a callback to those halcyon days of new wave of British heavy metal. They're just brilliant. Anyway, that's for me. Please do like and subscribe to my show on any whatever platform you're on. Do come and watch my little TikTok videos that I put out once a week on a Saturday, Australian Eastern Standard Time. They take a little bit of fun. They take a little bit of fun to do, and they're quite fun. And you know, anyway, or come over to my Facebook page, or if you want to jump onto YouTube. I don't have any videos of me just yet, but you can go back to my back catalogue and listen to it on YouTube if you wish to do so. But you're already on a streaming platform, so you're probably listening it here. What am I talking about, Tone? Anyway, bye for now. Keep safe. Catch you next week.